In this lesson, we'll learn how we can start to work with Mel scripts inside of Maya. Okay, so we're going to open up the scene file for this lesson. This is going to be lesson number 13. So let's double click on this, and you can see we have just a very simple setup at the moment. So what we're going to do is use a couple of tools and really just use this as sort of an example of how Mel scripting works and just what a Mel script is. So let's first start with our discussion on just Mel scripting in general, and Mel. Mel stands for Maya Embedded Language. And essentially Mel is the underlying code on which the entire functionality of Maya is built. So anytime we do pretty much anything inside of the user interface, whether it's as simple as selecting an object or deleting an object, duplicating an object, every single button that we click, behind the scenes, Maya is running a Mel script for each of those commands. So what we can do is by typing in our own Mel scripts, we can really take it over this whole process. So we can start to either write our own commands, or we can start to build a series of commands to do things that Maya normally just couldn't do out of the box. So this is an extraordinarily powerful functionality. So to access or to start to type in your Mel, you could do this in a couple of different ways. One would be to simply type in a line of code right in here. Or we could start to get a little bit more detailed with this and go into the script editor. That's going to be this button right down here. Now the nice thing about this script editor is the fact that we can actually see all of the scripts and all of the Mel that gets run in the background. So if we were to come in and let's say deselect something, you can see that Maya runs the Mel command select-cl, which basically means select clear your selection. If we select something like this curve here, you can see it goes through a selection process, and you can see it has now selected an object called curve1. If you were to select an object and let's say duplicate it, Control D, you can see duplicate has been run. Move an object, you can see now the result of a move. So every single thing that we do inside of the user interface, again, results in a Mel command. So let's start to talk a little bit about this and how we can start to use this. If you ever start to get to a point where you want to start to use Mel, one of the best things I could probably recommend for you to do is to just get in the habit of leaving this script editor open. And you can start to get an idea of the sort of commands that are being run, how these commands are structured, this sort of the syntax of each one of these commands. It does become sort of a helpful way to get started. Now, if we want to start to type in our own commands, we can do this down here in this little lower area. Now, Maya gives us two options. We can either use Mel, which is, again, our Maya embedded language, or you could use Python if you have any familiarity with Python scripting. But let's come in and just start to type in a little bit of simple Mel, and you can start to see how these things start to structure together. So for example, if I wanted to make a command where it automatically selects this object, this curve1, what we can do is type in a command that says select. You can see as soon as I type this in, Maya automatically recognizes this as a command, and it starts to shade this sort of a blue, in this case sort of a teal color. I'm going to make this text just a little bit larger for you to see, so I'm just going to use Control, press and hold the Control key on my keyboard, and then roll my mouse wheel to make this text larger or smaller. That should make this a little bit easier for you to see. So let's do select, and then we'll do curve1, which is the name of this object. If you take a look up here, curve1. Now, anytime we stop a line of Mel code, we want to use a semicolon. So that's going to be the button that's right next to the L key on your keyboard. And to run this, just select your command and then press Control Enter on your keyboard. You can see this command has now been run, select curve1, and this is what we get. All right, if we wanted to, we could do select-cl. Again, that's a flag for clear. Again, make sure we always end with a semicolon. Select, and then Control Enter. You can see that clears our selection, and this object is no longer selected. Okay, so let's now start to string a couple of different commands together. Now, if I were to take this object and go to my Surfaces menu, let's start by just going up to Surfaces and revolve. Okay, so you can see that takes this curve that we have selected here and revolves it around a central axis to make sort of this new piece of geometry. So you can see behind the scenes, Maya runs a command called revolve. And you can see it's got a whole bunch of additional options here that has specified exactly how this geometry is going to be generated and spat out to us. So let's make our own little mel command to handle this revolve. So we're going to select curve 1. Again, make sure we end that with a semicolon. If we just press enter on our keyboard, that'll take us to the next line. And now we're going to use the command revolve. And again, Maya recognizes that as a command and highlights that in sort of this teal color. Let's just, again, end this with a semicolon. Let's select both of these, and again, Control Enter on our keyboard. And you can see now it goes through this in order. It selects curve 1, and then with that curve selected, it applies a revolve command. Now looking at this, you can see that the revolve looks completely different than what we had previously. And that's because this mel command, or this revolve, is actually working properly. The problem, though, is that it's revolving it along the wrong axis. So it's actually revolving it along this x-axis, which is giving us sort of this little dinner plate sort of look. So what we need to do in our mel script is add some new keys or some new flags onto this to control the axis of revolution. Now the nice thing about working with this mel in a script editor is the fact that you don't necessarily have to remember every single mel command in Maya. That would be pretty much impossible. But what you can do is get a little bit of help here. So very important, we want to make sure that we highlight the command that we want to learn more about. With this command highlighted, right click and go down to this command documentation. Give this just a second. It's going to pop open a browser where we can now learn about this revolve mel command. And we can actually learn a little bit more about some of the flags that go into this. So if we wanted to control the start sweep, the end sweep, what sort of a degree this is being generated at, we can control that. So what we're looking for is this little flag right here. We want to control the axis. Now, once you find the command that you're looking for, Maya will also tell you how these commands need to be input. So linear, linear, and linear. That means it needs an X, a Y, and a Z axis, pretty much. So we're going to use this -AX, or we could use the long version, -axis. And then we'll give it an X, Y, and Z axis. So revolve, space. We want no revolution in the x-axis, space. We want full revolution in the y-axis, but no revolution in the z. So these are pretty much just on-off switches. 0 means none, 1 means full, or complete, or yes, in some cases. Okay, so now it should revolve around this y-axis. So again, select both of these, Control Enter, and let's see. Line 2 has an invalid code. So we actually forgot to add in that axis flag. So -AX. There we go. Let's try that. There we go. Much better. So now we've revolved that along a y-axis. And there we go. Excellent. That gives us our result. So that's where we can now start to come in and string a couple of these different commands together. Let's take this even a little bit further. Let's again press Enter to go to a new line, and now let's choose to move the resulting geometry. So let's say move, space, and then again we put in X, Y, and Z coordinates. So let's say we'll move it 5 units in the X, 0 units in the Y, so that way it doesn't move up or down, and we'll move it 3 units in the Z axis. Again, make sure that we always end our command with a semicolon. And let's just select this geometry, delete that. And again, Control Enter. And there we go. So the geometry was selected, the revolve command was applied, and the resulting geometry was moved 5 units, 0 units, and 3 units. You can see 5, 0, and 3. Okay, so again, this is something that we would not normally have been able to do just with one simple button press, but we can do that with one string of commands inside the Mel editor. Now let's even have a little bit more fun with this. Let's say that we want the resulting geometry to be moved in random directions. So we want, every time we run this command, we want the geometry to wind up in a different place. So we can actually start to give this some randomization values. So we need to first use the flag random, so that's R-A-N-D. We're going to use a parentheses, and then we define the minimum and the maximum value of that randomization. So let's say I want it to wind up on this x-axis anywhere from, let's say, 20 anywhere over to negative 20. So we want it to wind up anywhere in that area. So we'll say 20 and negative 20. Okay, and then we'll close that off. Now what we need to do is, in addition to closing these values off with the parentheses, we need to actually close off this entire command with another set of parentheses. So close that, and then close that again over here. There we are. So that will now randomize the appearance of any objects along this x-axis. Let's do the same over here along the z-axis. So again, parentheses, rand for random. And now let's again put in random values. Let's say a value between 20 and negative 20 for that as well. Make sure we close off that parentheses and add another one to close off the whole thing. Okay. And again, we're going to leave the y-axis at 0, so that way it doesn't fluctuate or move up and down along the y-axis. Let's again delete this piece of geometry and see what we wind up with. So I'm going to just